Welcome to episode 32 of the Trash Talk Business Podcast. If you're in the waste industry, junk removal, demolition, deconstruction, you got something to haul, one call, that's all. You come to the right place. Here we are here to talk about how to grow, scale, get out of your business. And today, we're going to talk about protecting your business. A little teaser. Casey, Bubba Lawrence, joining us from the great state of Texas with a fresh haircut, looking good down there. What are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about guns and how many of them you need on you at all times to protect you and your business in case some fucknut tries to mess with you. And we also have a guest. His name's Eric. And I think he has a second take on insurance of your business and person.
Let's talk insurance. Yeah, let's talk about our insurance. I mean, I'm all about firearms. However, no one asked for my certificate of firearm insurance. Eric Zauner, Marine Corps vet, does my insurance. Shameless plug. He's kept me out of legal issues along the way. So, Eric, welcome to the Trash Talk Business Podcast. Good to have you. Let's talk insurance, man.
Thanks, gentlemen. I appreciate you having me on. It's an honor to be here.
So I'll tell the story just to get out of the way. I used to be part of the Wisconsin Veterans Chamber of Commerce before I was ceremoniously kicked out, and I'm very proud of that. I know, right? Because you know what? Veterans were good to each other, but not always. Anyhow, back then when I used to network at the Veterans Chamber, I used to go to these Thursday mixers, and it was a bunch of vets trying to hawk each other's shit. And I didn't like it. I didn't like it one damn bit because I was one of the few business owners in the room. Eric knows this story because I've told it in front of him, so no shame here. Anyhow, so no shit, there I was knee-deep in a pile of hand grenade pins, and Eric, with his fucking nice-ass haircut, comes up to me. He's like, hey, buddy. I was like, I ain't your fucking buddy, right? He's like, insurance and stuff. And I was like, yeah, I don't want it. He's like, buy you a beer. And I was like, bet you will, right? And then that was kind of it. And then like a couple days later, because he got my business card, he emails me. He's like, hey, do you want to talk about insurance? And I just emailed back, no, I'm good. And that was kind of it for like 6 months, right? Because I tell people, and this isn't junk removal, if you go into it just telling people what you have to offer to sell, they're going to say yes or no. That's it. Either they need junk removal or they don't. They need insurance or they don't. But Eric kept buying me beers at events, right? And you know a key to a man's heart, right? Butter him up a little bit. And then turns out I bought a PEO. I had a PEO, which is, the fuck is it? What's PEO again, Eric? What is that? It's employment.
I can't remember but it's like a professional employment organization.
There it is. See, that's what use your research. There you go. Professional employment organization, right? Who was doing my workers' comp, and then I got this little thing called an audit, and they're like, "Hey, this isn't so hot." And I was like, "Hey, remember that guy that keeps buying me beers? He does this kind of stuff." And I forwarded him an email. He goes, "Hey, this is really bad." And I was like, "Oh, okay, let's talk about this." So that's how our actual business relationship started. Since then, he's invested in our companies in the past. He's been a huge advocate of all the things that I do. Really happy to have him on the podcast. He's a Marine Corps veteran, like I said. His kids hang out with my kid, so that's always a good sign when you can hang out outside of work. I've never actually hung out with your kid, Casey. Seen pictures.
No,
never hung out with
him. Well, right now for the past a week and a half, both my sons have been sick as hell.
Jeez.
Ryland's fine. I mean, he's still coughing a little bit. He's good. But Levi, the youngest, 5 months old, poor thing. I mean, he hasn't slept. Neither has me or Monica. It's been a shit show, but he's getting better slowly but surely.
Got it. All right. Well, now that we got the health update from the kids, let's talk about insurance. So, raging endorsement for Eric, takes care of my thing. And then, here's the other thing. This is just a business tip, right? Eric started by dealing with a workers' comp audit bullshit. And over the next year, audited all my shit, and now he covers everything from, the business stuff all the way to his wife took care of my homeowner's insurance when I moved this last year. So that's the point is, right? You even with junk removal, it might start as a shit job that you don't want to do, but you got to consider the consequences of saying yes to those jobs to the right people, those contractors, because you never know what it's going to turn into, and that's their lesson of the day right off the bat. All right. So the other thing I've done over the years, I've thrown some people Eric's way. So, Eric, what are some of the things you've seen now that you've done several junk removal companies, different states? What are some of the things you've seen that are unique to our industry and challenges when it comes to junk removal and insurance?
Maybe even some claims. I mean, you can leave the people out of it, obviously, but I want to know some common shit that happens that these listeners can get some value out of.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm finding that it's really based on the demographics, where the company is located. I think that that's probably true for all industries, but we're finding that now more than ever with the financial markets in the state that they are, the economy being in the state that it's in, we are seeing increased rates across the board. So whether it just be a company's general liability or their auto insurance, we are seeing rate increases across the board. I will say that the heartland United States, the Midwest, and the South have performed the best. Anything on the coastlines has really struggled. I mean, fires in California.
So you're talking rates. So basically, you're saying if you're in those areas, your rates are going to increase exponentially.
Yeah, we're just saying overall. So like, regardless of your claim activity, regardless of really your operations, although I think operations obviously matter. Just straight insurance talk right now. The economy state is having an impact in the insurance world. End of statement.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Fine. So we're not gonna bore our listeners with insurance because hell, you and I had lunch last week, and I'm like, Eric, I don't care. Like, tell me where do I need to sign and what coverage do I need? So because I just picked up a nice contract with a commercial account. So like what are those?
Well, that's the other thing, Andy, is what's a good basic coverage? And when I say basic, I don't mean cheapest. I mean, hey, look, I just got started. I'm within my first year. I don't have any big ass contracts or jobs that require me to go up a level in my insurance. And a lot of people are not, I don't know if afraid's the right word, but they're very standoffish with insurance because A, they don't think they can afford it. B, they don't know if they need it. And C, sometimes they have an agent who doesn't necessarily cover them where they need to be covered as much as they're just like, hey, here's a blanket and pay me my money.
Yeah, Casey, you're absolutely right. You know, the two coverages that stand out when we talk about junk removal are your general liability. Okay, so that's, and again, trying not to be insurance geeky on you guys here, but general liability. So that's bodily injury and property damage protection. That's essentially what general liability is for. I think the second one is your auto liability, your auto insurance. A lot of people don't realize when they're driving their own personal vehicles that there's exclusions for business use. So if they don't have
and vice versa, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's true. Less on the commercial side. If there's common ownership, if you have a commercial auto policy and there's common ownership, meaning you as the vehicle owner are the business, but you're also the personal company owner.
Gotcha.
There's some gray area. It really does depend on the forms, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking more like we had this issue with one of our guys where we let him take a truck home because his car broke down. And then I find out a couple days later, he's fucking taking the kids to goddamn dance class, right? And so he's got 2-3 kids in the back seat without a car seat. And right, like, that should make you twitchy, right? I mean, that's the kind of shit. That's the, like, to your point, Casey, like, that's the opposite. Like, it's one thing when you're using your personal car for business. Another thing when you're using a business vehicle for personal and it's not your kid. Like, my daughter's in my Jeep. My Jeep's covered by the business, right? Like, I'll argue that all day. I guess, Eric, unless you can tell me I'm fucked. But, like I feel confident doing that, right? However, somebody else's kids are in my car. That's a problem.
Well, Andy, the thing is, you're not the only person that does that. So there's a couple people I've talked to personally. They're like, oh, yeah, I have a guy. He just doesn't have a vehicle, so he takes my truck home, and he only drives to and from work. The thing is, he doesn't. But that's the thing.
That's the problem. That's fine until he doesn't do that. Yeah.
Right. I mean, the trip to the gas station to pick up a 40 or, you know, a trip to the grocery store and you get a fender bender. Next thing you know it, your insurance guy's like, look, why, at 9 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night at this area, why were you in a wreck? Oh, I wasn't. Oh, now I'm not covered because it wasn't for or for work use. And it wasn't even for my person. It was for someone else.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. You know, this gets into a little bit about the size of the company and operations, right? What is the business owner doing to be a best-in-class business, okay? And don't get me wrong, everybody starts somewhere, right? We all have to make sacrifices up front. But I would argue that insurance is not where you do that when you're starting, okay? Because everything that you put into your business, whether it be your life savings or financial liens or loans to get your business running, are protected buy insurance. And if you're not properly insured and you do have that auto incident or another claim that's not covered because you were being frugal and you're trying to save a couple $100, it could fold your company. And that's how litigious our environment is.
So let's talk about that. So when we were part of the franchise organization, like they told us, oh, get general liability insurance, get the cheapest shit. Hell, they had a vendor that would sell us fucking janitorial service. And then when you audited me and somebody else audited me, they're like, yeah, this is, you're setting yourself up for failure. Right. The other thing is they were like, don't have employees, just pay people cash. And like, to your point, like you just talk about like professional, like 1099, 1099 then, which like in the state of Wisconsin, found out this shit last year, they changed it. If you're 1099 and you don't have your own insurance, they treat you like a W-2 when it comes to workers' comp now.
That's exactly right.
So it's like
that's not just Wisconsin, Andy. That's pretty much all states.
Really?
No.
Well, also, if you don't carry workers' comp, then there's a huge penalty as well with a 1099.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is, in the beginning you find out these things the hard way, or you find out, like for us, we actually did really good. We never had a claim on workers' comp, but a lot of people are like, oh, I don't need workers' comp, and we're never going to use it. The issue is you never get notified the second you need workers' comp. It always comes after the fact. It's already done. And guess what? You are paying the money. And that's the issue, right? Is the ignorance, I think. So if we could tell these people up front, like, hey, look, insurance is one of those things. You don't need it until you need it. So it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
Not junk removal related, but I have a roofing client of mine here in Milwaukee who had work comp. All of their employees are 1099. Had work comp, let it lapse. They decided to start hiring W-2 employees, so the conversation about work comp came back up.
That's not going to do us any good.
But there was about an 8-month separation between when they had coverage and when they were trying to get it back. And the state of Wisconsin fined them every single day that they did not have coverage. And that fine was in excess of $100,000. These states are not messing around. And what I think people have to understand about work comp is not for the employer.
Right.
Okay? It's for the employees, and that's why it's protected by the states.
So you not only do you cover my insurance, but you also cover the insurance of other junk removal companies across the country. So let's talk, right, as sexy as insurance isn't, let's talk about it. Like what are things people need to know about insurance industry-wise? How do they protect themselves? Like get down to the brass tacks. What do people need to know when they're starting, or growing their business when it comes to insurance?
Yeah. I think the two insurance products that junk removal companies should really be cautious of and consider is their general liability. Okay. So that's bodily injury and property damage type incidents, and auto insurance, auto liability, specifically making sure they have the proper commercial insurance for their business operation. Before we started recording, we were talking about situations where business owners may be utilizing their personal vehicles for business use and vice versa. There's all types of potential claims, uncovered claims or gaps in coverage when you do that. So I would say that those are the two most important for sure.
Okay, so let's talk about that real quick. So what is it? Okay, so a lot of guys they got their own personal truck, paid off, not paid off, whatever, right? What are the challenges if you're just running your regular ass Progressive or Geico insurance, right? You're paying $120 a month, right? What's the problem once you start banging jobs?
Right. The problem is if you're on a construction site, right, and you're buying your own personal insurance. Right. Let's assume that we've got that 92 Honda Civic that we're still rocking and rolling. Right. You're on a job site and you back into a light pole on the job site. That GC is going to obviously get a hold of your insurance company. Right. Geico's going to look at that and they're going to go, hey, what were you doing on this job site? Well, I was removing debris or whatever you're doing there. Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, we don't insure business use. So there's no coverage. That's the concern, is that you're buying insurance that when you need it, it's not effective for you.
Yeah, it is the classic example, and myself included. I used to bang jobs, right? If people are like, hey, do you have a certificate of liability insurance? I'm like, I don't know what that is. I don't have one.
Right.
You can pay me in cash.
Yeah.
or you can write a check into my personal name, because I didn't have liability insurance. No one asked me for my auto insurance, and thankfully I never had a major incident, or if I did, it was, because I got an, incident with someone else that was uninsured or underinsured.
I would say that our community, the United States, is such a litigious environment. I mean, every opportunity somebody can get to sue you, as uncomfortable as that sounds saying it, it's just real. I mean, whether you're moving furniture down somebody's stairwell and you put a hole in their wall, or you have an employee who slips and falls and hurts themselves, or an auto accident. I mean, these are all situations where you get involved in a wrong accident with the wrong person. You want to make sure that you have the defense costs to protect your business.
Yeah. Well, on the other hand is, everybody, at least as far as I can tell, everybody's goal is to get out of the truck themselves, which means you're putting someone else in a truck that you own and that you should be covered, which also means if they get in a wreck, now they have to answer for their, obviously for their driving, but you still have to be covered. I don't know how many times we had, a couple times we had people actually hit our trailers at like a stoplight for turning right or a yield. Maybe because they weren't looking, paying attention, and they actually went forward while my guys were stopped. And every single time, this also goes back to pre-checking your vehicles before you leave. But, they all said, well, the lights still worked even after they got hit. The brake lights still worked, which is good. But in their defense, they could always say, well, the truck was rolling back or whatever. And now if you don't have proper insurance, you're coming out of pocket just to keep someone else happy and off your back.
I had a situation where we had someone that wasn't supposed to be driving, sign a piece of paper saying she wasn't going to drive, truck and trailer, side of the road, backed in the car, $5,600 out of my own fucking pocket later. Here we are.
Yeah. I would also, I would argue too that the commercial jobs, I mean, they're the ones that want to see the certificates of insurance, right? But they're not the ones that are typically pulling the trigger when there's an incident. I mean,
no.
Really we see it on the residential side, right? These
mailboxes, curbs.
Exactly.
I mean, it's because it's their house and they will nitpick and be petty if they're allowed to be, if that makes any sense.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I sent a crew back out to a brand new house because they had ruts in the front yard. Because, honestly, they off track too much into the front yard. They had one of those wraparound driveways.
Yep.
And I ended up having to go back out there because the customer still wasn't happy. Yep. And I filled in the ruts, relayed the sod. But, you look at it and, are you covered under insurance? This also goes into maybe the next subject, Eric. Sometimes your deductible is not worth it.
Nope.
Get out there and kind of take care of your business, right? Yep. Because use that deductible, well, that's going to affect the rest of your premium.
That's exactly right. There are circumstances where sometimes it's better to just pay for it and be done than let that follow you around for 3 to 5 years. You're absolutely right, Casey.
No, and that's a total fucking side note. Don't drive in people's grass. We used to have a grass waiver. Dude, I was getting twitchy just listening about that. I've had to go out, throw dirt down, throw down seed, throw down sod, pay a fucking landscaping company. Remember we did this big-ass job in Madison, Wisconsin, when I had the franchise out there. And the woman that ran the job, who still owns a franchise, now owns a franchise, she let the guys drive because it was like a barn. And she's like, it's a lot closer. I was like, don't let them drive in the grass. She's like, no, the homeowner okayed it. Well, the homeowner okayed it until we pulled like 12 trailers out of his house, created ruts up the wazoo. It was fine on the day that it was nice and dry and hard. As soon as it rained, dude, like whatever. It ended up being like $6,000 job and $3,000 in landscape repair.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like
going back.
Sprinkler heads get popped, and that $6 sprinkler head turns into a huge ordeal.
Under this same topic, though, I've seen insurance policies that they essentially exclude coverage the moment your crew walks into somebody else's home. I mean,
well, actually, I had that. I had that shit that was sold to me. It was a janitorial service, right? Someone's like, we don't have junk removal. I was like, well, what do you have that's close? They're like, janitorial. I'm like, all right, cool. So we had janitorial. We ended up having a claim, and 100%, the insurance was like, no, you shouldn't have been in somebody's house in the first place.
Yeah.
because that was through the guy recommended by the franchisor that we used to be part of.
Yeah, and
Right?
and I've seen
Like-
a number of those, and in fact, I'll be honest with you, I've sold them not knowing that there were these clauses that were underlying, until there's an incident, and then you have a claim, and the coverage form, the way that the policy responds to the incident is I mean, we're talking about fine-tooth details here where one carrier's pointing fingers at another one just trying to excuse not having to pay the bill, and the reality is that's not right. The coverage should be there, but unfortunately if it's not fully understood, you could find yourself in those situations.
Eric, I got in a big battle with a humongous equipment company, a worldwide equipment company, Doosan Bobcat, right? They build machines, skid steers, excavators, you name it. And we actually went through 2 engines on our Bobcat, our skid steer. First time it was covered under factory warranty because it was, first time it was a brutal fight because it wasn't covered under their warranty. They found water in the fuel. And I had it down to the T, where the fuel came from, what time, all that good stuff. And it was through a fuel company who guarantees their fuel. So, I mean, they were like, hey, look, we'll have a certificate out there, blah, blah, blah. They shut down that gas station the day the claim went through their company. They shut that entire gas station down just to do testing.
Wow.
Because they guarantee their fuel. Anyways, it got to the point where we had to use our insurance to cover that engine. Thank God, because otherwise it would have been about $15,000, $16,000. On the flip side, the next time, less than a year later, not even, maybe 8 months, same exact thing happened, right? Now, mind you, I've drove diesels my whole life, and I'm going to tell you, every single time there's any kind of filter on any diesel engine, I'm used to it. So when it happened again, I was like, okay, this doesn't make sense. This time, insurance was like, I don't know what to tell you. This is a hard one to do. It looks very personal, like y'all are just messing up. And then once again, Bobcat didn't want to cover it as well. So I actually got a hold of the president of the North American region of Bobcat through LinkedIn. Huge email, right? And I played the small business card, the veteran card, you name it. And never heard back from him, but immediately, about 2 hours later, people were calling me like, hey, who'd you talk to? Like, dude, you got, like, hey, we're going to do everything we can to fix this, And I was like, what the hell happened? Well, I looked on LinkedIn, and obviously he read it. He just didn't respond. He's probably like, dude, why is this guy messaging me? Y'all need to take
Somebody fix this. Yeah, right.
I've never heard that story. That's a good ass story.
But it got fixed. It got fixed. And then we ended up getting out of that skid steer. But the problem that I was kind of bringing up is the first time around, we were forced to use our own insurance because, A, we needed that machine. At that point in our business, it was a necessity every day. But also, B, that was a huge nut. I mean, $16,000 on an engine can put a business out, right? So if we didn't have that insurance, we honestly would have been either A, just stuck paying on something that doesn't run, or B, all our cash reserves straight to an engine.
Yep. Now, I'm just curious because I think this is a great lesson learned, right? So, like, of the insurances that your company purchases, where was that coverage found? Was it the inland marine or equipment policy? Was that part of your auto policy?
So that was actually added on later on because even before we owned the equipment, we, as you do whenever you're a novice, we thought when you rent something, you're covered because they always have this box like, oh, do you have insurance? Yeah, we have insurance. Cool. So if you damage a rental machine, you think you're covered. You're not covered, by the way. And the insurance you pay for with the rental company, they'll tell you. That doesn't cover shit.
It ain't doing anything.
That covers only thing that covers it if it falls off the truck. Then it's covered. That's it. So when we actually upgraded and all this other stuff, we went through our insurance guy, who, by the way, I recommend him as well. Just because I've used him my entire career, but he was like, hey, I can get you coverage for A, B, and C, and we even got coverage for rental equipment whenever we rented the bigger equipment, excavators, dozers, you name it. But yeah, we had to. I mean, it was a little. I think at the end of everything, we were paying about $2,800 a month just in insurance. But that was also a lot of big jobs. Andy knows, a lot of things required us to carry a certain amount of policy, but yeah, it was extra because we needed it.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, and that's exactly where you would find it. That's why I said the inland and marine policy, and a lot of times the junk removal companies that I'm seeing are not necessarily renting equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Their people are going in there and they're by hand moving things or with fork,
right.
Hand trucks or whatever. But yeah, I mean, if you're an entity and you are relying on other commercial businesses or their equipment to get your job done, that you're absolutely right. That stuff has to be scheduled on the policy, or you could be out that equipment. That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Well, and this goes to our listeners and where we have been, right? The goal of the podcast here is to give people the answers to the test so you don't have to learn them yourself. I was out $5,600 on a situation, like I said, because someone drove they weren't supposed to. Right? We were told, Casey and I, we were both told when we first started our business, like from the franchisor we were part of, was like, hey, don't get employees, just pay people cash. It's like, yeah, that's fucking cool when it's your younger brother or someone you went to high school with. But then like workers' comp was a mother. I mean, that's actually why you and I got together. But then we started doing 1099 guys, right? And I got audited this year for 1099 guys. Found out no one fucking told me. I never got an email. Workers' comp, it has to, like, your 1099 subs need workers' comp in Wisconsin. Like,
we found a lot during COVID. We found a lot. Yeah. We found out more during COVID about 1099s and their rights. And the issue was, like, even if you are the owner of the business, say, hey, I provided you with all the tools and all this, the minute you set their schedule, they are immediately a W-2 employee.
Oh, that's interesting.
And we didn't know that. We're like, well, what do you mean? They agreed. It doesn't matter, because if it escalates, they can always be like, look, this is the only time they allowed me to work, and I'm a 1099 employee.
Yeah, versus paying them to get the job done versus, hey, you have to be here. Oh, yeah. When they ask the question, like, there's those no-shit questions, like whether you're W-2 or 1099, and it's like, do they have a uniform? Do they have a start time? Do they have a – like, it's like some basic-ass shit. And that's it. That's the entire auditing process.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. Most states have like an authorized subcontractor clause, okay, which basically defines what qualifies somebody as a subcontractor. But, for example, in the state of Wisconsin, one of the 9 checkpoints to determine if they're a qualified subcontractor is that they have to maintain their own insurance. So
you're screwed either way. Yeah.
Right. And that right there is like the tipping point. Like, well, if they're not going to do it and you're just going to 1099 them, that's fine, but you want to account for them on your payroll.
Like my guy Paul the painter, I had this guy down in Cudahy used to bang jobs for me. Demo guy, but he ended up smoking weed on a job, and I got a 2-star review. It was one of the worst decisions, one of those decisions I made that didn't work out early in business, right? But it's like Paul the painter or TV Steve, right? Like they're like, they don't have insurance, right? If you have someone in their phone as Paul the painter or TV Steve, you probably don't have insurance, right? As soon as you start paying them not cash, or they walk on your property and get hurt and throw up a flag, like, you're fucked, right? And like, it was funny at JunkCon a couple of weeks back. I brought up people. They're like, well, how'd you get started? I'm like, yeah, I just had random people I knew from Craigslist and Life and the Bar and everywhere else. And it's like, yeah, looking back at it, it was a terrible choice for my business. But I also had to work through those challenges to get to this point now. Like, I didn't know my insurance was screwed until I was told it was screwed. Like, I don't pay attention to insurance, right? Or like when we had that janitorial.
When you first got started, it's not like you had a lot to lose, right? Like that's
I didn't have shit.
When you're getting started,
I did though. But that's the thing, right? I did lose.
Personal,
right? Yeah, absolutely. Like a year ago when there was that. It wasn't even a year ago. It wasn't that long ago. But when that situation happened, where I buck up $5,600 because a driver that wasn't supposed to drive drove, dude, I could cover that now, right?
Yeah.
6 years ago, there's no way I could come up with $5,000. So I had a lot to lose. I just, or maybe that isn't the right word. I didn't have a lot to lose, but I didn't have shit to gain by not having insurance. And it's actually like what we learned about it when Mike talked about profit first. It's like you gotta put aside the money you know you need to have in business, right? And having insurance, like I talk about insurance, like I started with the dirty 3, and now it's the dirty half dozen. Right, the dirty half dozen I've talked about on this podcast in the past. Right, the people you need to have in your life, you don't like them. Right, you don't want to call them necessarily, but they're absolutely necessary, right? And they are banker, lawyer, insurance guy, CPA, financial planner, and your bookkeeper. Those are the dirty half dozen. Eric knows I sit down once a year. I call it the meeting of the minds, but really it's my board of advisors. I sit down with the dirty half dozen to talk through like, hey, this is the plan for the business. What am I not seeing? Because I'm like hard charged. I'm like, shit's going to work out. Like, I'll figure it out when I get there. It's great until you get slapped with a lawsuit.
Well, and Andy,
and now you're like, I don't know where to start.
And that's a great testament to you. I mean, setting your pride aside to go, hey, listen, there are other business professionals out there who have insight. Maybe they don't know my day-to-day, or maybe they do, but I'm going to put these people in a room and we're going to roundtable this, and we're going to make sure that we're, again, striving to be that best-in-class organization.
Well, and to Casey's point, most of our listeners here are, one of the first questions is, how do I get out of the truck? Right? So I loved, Derek, you tell me, right from an insurance perspective, how does someone get out of the truck? And that being, actually out of the truck, and also the mindset of being in the truck banging jobs every day.
Yeah, you're talking about just soliciting that they'll come and do removal?
Well, no, I'm just saying, like, hey, owner-operators don't want to be banging jobs all day.
Right.
They want to get to the point where when I first started, when I first started, it was my brother and I. Casey and his stepbrother banging jobs, right? You eventually get to a point where you have other guys doing jobs, right? You're running like two trucks. You got one truck. Your number two guy's got another truck. But then it gets to a point where you're out doing networking events or running operations or sitting on the beach like Casey does, drinking passion fruit margaritas. Yeah. Right?
So,
but the goal is to get out of the truck. So, what do guys need to be thinking about to get out of the truck in that mindset?
I think the first thing is that they got to find a number two. They got to find somebody else that they can rely on that can step into that seat and train them, right? Train that person to be proficient, and then give them the authority to go out there and operate. That's one. But I'll tell you, industry-wide, hiring is an issue, okay? So that comes with its own challenges. But I would say first and foremost, if you want to get out of the truck, you have to put yourself out there financially and hire. You got to hire in the people to help you.
Yeah, and then you also got to protect them. I talk about things that make me twitchy. It's things that are illegal, immoral, unethical, unsecure, and unsafe, right?
Yeah.
And trust me, I don't like insurance. When I see that money come out of the account like twice a month, right? Now, I got 11 vehicles in the fleet right now, plus like 15 employees, right? It's a hit every month. I hate it, right?
Yep.
I hate having it, but I need to have it, right? It's that mindset. It's an investment so that we are safe. So if something does happen, I don't want to tell guys, oh yeah, hey, go out bang jobs, and then all of a sudden something happens to somebody, God forbid, and I'm like, oh hey, you're screwed. Sorry about you.
That's
well, there's also.
Go ahead, Casey. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Eric.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Eric can probably speak on this. When I started my demolition company, I was talking to my insurance guy, right? Because I was like, hey, it's going to be a different scope. And my premium definitely looked different, let me tell you. So I've always paid my premium a year at a time. I hate monthly payments. I just, whatever. This one, I paid it twice. I was like, I can't do the whole year. That ain't going to happen. But he did say, he was like, if it's just you, and especially sole proprietorships, there's insurance that protects your pay, your income, in case you get hurt or sick. You yourself, as the business owner, if you are like a sole proprietor, if you go down, well, now you don't have to worry about, hey, I'm not working, I'm not making money. Now you can, hey, at least you get some sort of coverage insurance that pays you while you're recouping or whatever. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure what that's called, Eric. I'm sure you've heard of that.
Yeah, typically the way that's done, if the owner is trying to protect their wages in the event of a work-related injury, it's just the owner being included on the work comp, right? So work comp can be done a couple different ways. One, it can include the owners, and I always recommend that if the owner is day-to-day in the operations doing lifting, okay? But that then means that the owner's payroll is accounted for. Typically, there's a minimum owner's payroll, which means your pricing goes up to account for the owner's payroll. Most companies that I see, if the owner's not involved or if they're trying to keep their costs down, the owner themselves are not included. Their payroll's not included. Thereby, the premium is reduced by the owner's payroll. So that's just really the only way to do it. There are other business income protections, but they're all related for property losses. So let's say there's a hurricane, tornado, a fire at your facility, your operations are down, you need to either A, get up and running, B, replace income, or C, replace or have income to continue to pay your utility costs. But those are all related to property type losses.
Gotcha.
Cool.
Yeah.
So where are there gaps? Like when you audit people, because I know you do free audits for companies, what gaps are you seeing, and how are people responding to those gaps?
Yeah, the biggest gap that I'm seeing is going back to the auto insurance piece. I mean, a lot of people, just to be frugal, are continuing to insure their vehicles personally, Geico, Progressive. Not that there's anything wrong with those companies, but they're doing it as cheap as they can, and they're doing it personally rather than getting the business the auto liability insurance that it needs. That's the biggest gap that I'm seeing. Most companies have the general liability coverage. Again, the quality of that coverage is in question. What is that coverage form saying? Is it going to respond when we have a property damage incident? But those are the top two. And then, work comp. I mean, those are the big three, I think, for our world. Now, again, depending on the size and scope of our operations kind of determines whether or not we need more technical type coverage forms, meaning, if we've got a large staff, do we need, an employment practices liability policy, right? To protect our ability to hire and fire and manage our people in the event we have a claim or lawsuit alleging our discrimination or unlawful hiring standards or practices. Okay. So again, depending on the size of the company is really going to determine the technical coverages that follow suit. But again, the big three: general liability for damages that we could cause to other people or their belongings, auto liability for incidents that could take place while we're on the road, right? And then work comp, protecting our people while they're out doing work. Those are the big three.
Yeah, and that's like when we started, we had those and eventually got employees, so we got the workers' comp piece. Along the way, we had these commercial accounts that want us to add these random fucking things, right? And it's like the dumbest shit. Like I remember there was a school we did a job for. It was like we had to add like $150 clause, but it also had one where it was like super cost prohibitive. Like is that just the nature of this industry, and that people get twitchy and they need a fucking
it's all about the money.
It is, but again, this goes back to an indication of the society that we lived in. I mean, look at the insurance requirements your guys' companies are seeing. How many times are you seeing a request for $2, $5, $10 million umbrella liability policies? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost standard.
That's what I mean. So, fortunately, Andy, Casey, I can't speak to your operations, but Andy, we've been fortunate that we've been able to negotiate a lot of those requirements down to save costs. But I do think that we are headed in a time where, nobody's safe from a nuclear judgment in a courtroom. And these large general contractors, large commercial operations, they want to know that you have protection.
Well, I think it's also, you got to look at what you're seen as on their job sites too. You're the trash guy. That's it.
Yeah.
You're not their foreman. You're not bringing in assets. You're taking away trash. So they want to make sure that you taking away trash doesn't F up their operations, because time is money, especially construction sites. That's where I'm kind of speaking from mostly. Developments. I mean, in order for me to go in and just take any kind of just trash, not even demolition, just take trash off of a development. If it's one of the big developers out here, your insurance better be up to par, or you're not getting business with them.
Yep.
But the good thing is, this is where it falls on the business owner. Nurture that contract, nurture that contact, because now you have the insurance. Now you're like, hey, look, I played ball. Let's keep this up.
Yeah.
Right. Because
or you've seen the work we've done before, right? You've seen the work we've done before. Why all of a sudden are we now needing an extra $3 million in umbrella coverage?
I mean, you have to go pick up pallets from like an Amazon or a McDonald's distribution facility, right? Like I'm picking up pallets that are outside. Like literally, what's the worst that can happen? They're like, well, you need a $10 million cap because you come on our property. It's like, well, what the fuck, right? Like you don't even have a starting point, right? Now, like the Waste Management, Republic of Services of the world, they have that type of insurance because they're operating hundreds of trucks, thousands of trucks every day. It's tough. It's tough being the independent owner operator. And, I've had a couple of contracts where their insurance requirements it wasn't worth doing business with them. I've done, there's a national nonprofit I did work with that by the time we went through the insurance requirements and paid the lawyers to negotiate the contract, on a 60-day contract, I lost money.
Yeah.
So that's the other word of advice. Like, know where you fit in. If you got a company that's so big and way out there, too big for their britches, if you will, and they need all this crap and it's not worth it, like, I'm not going to buy $2,000. Yeah, like Eric, you and I talked about this. You're like, hey, it's $2,000 to add this. How big is the job worth? I'm like, $250, and you're like, you'll never need this again.
What's the point?
And you're like,
right?
No.
Right. And when you go back to the company, like, hey, I can't provide that insurance. Half the time they're going to be like, all right, whatever, we're going to find someone else. Fine. The other half the time they're like, well, we need this done. And you're like, cool. Where's the middle ground?
That's why I would just call my insurance guy. But hey, look, this company is requiring this. In the event that they accept this quote, we need to roll it out. But right now, just have it on paper, because I don't want to start paying for shit and then them change their mind later on.
Yep.
Well, then that's the other thing. It's also like, I mean, you guys, you were talking about earlier, right? As an insurance guy, you have a product to sell. You want to sell as much of your product as possible, right? No shame in that. So the other thing I've done successfully, you and I have done this before, Eric, is like when they've required these big things, I literally just forward him the email. I'm like, all right, Eric, like, what is this going to cost me, right? And then I'll say, because normally it's not like the owner of the company, these big organizations, it's an operations person, an admin person. They're checking the box. But then once you break it down Barney style, and like Eric can have a conversation with them, now you can have a conversation between two people that know what they're talking about, and then it's like, all right, do we actually need this? And make that decision, yes or no.
Yeah,
let's have some logic brought into the illogical conversation.
What's interesting though is with all these, certificate of insurance support forums now, there's a lot of general contractors are utilizing these basically technology platforms that they have insurance requirements. They send it out and it's all done internally in their system. And if you're not compliant, and your company's basically red flagged until you're compliant. And that includes whatever your policy limits are, whatever limits are required by contract. But now what I'm getting at is they're removing the human element. And it's now computer systems that are, are you compliant or are you not compliant?
Kick it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, we just had the big one with the big property management company where thankfully we have a PM that wants to use us. So he gave us the answers to the test. Right. But yeah, if we would have just put in our name as a vendor, they'd have been like, cool, thanks for your info. You don't meet our minimum standards. And you're like, well, what do I not meet? And they're like, insurance requirements. It's like, well,
which ones?
I do I need to die? Right? Like, is this $100 fix or $100,000 fix? Right?
Yeah.
I'll put $100 fix on something stupid. Like, if you ask me right now what kind of insurance I have, I'll be like, I don't know. I know I have cyber. You didn't mention cyber. I know I have that shit because I needed it to be just to send an email to the federal government. You need cyber insurance, basically. That's the hillbilly math of it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, oh, you want to send us an email? Better have cyber.
Well, I listen, I'm a big proponent of cyber, but I think cyber falls within that kind of technical, that technical additional coverage form. I mean, listen, if you're not holding client data, right, and all of your banking is done direct, and you don't really have a net, like, you've got a couple spreadsheets on your computer, but you're not holding any data, you're not moving money, you're not, that's all handled directly with your bank. If you are a smaller organization, cyber might not be the right thing to spend money on right now. Now, if you're an established organization like Camo Crew is, and you're taking in a number of credit card payments, you are doing banking transfers between general contractors, subcontractors, banking institutions. Yeah, absolutely. Cyber is the fourth pillar. No question.
Yeah, so, and that's the thing. So, and when I housed everything on Jobber and on QuickBooks, like you audited me. It's like we weren't keeping anything. And we were sending money out, but never bringing money in. Mm-hmm. But once we started getting ACH transfers from some big people, that's what changed everything. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. That's when we had to really step up our cyber game. And that's just the nature of the beast. Mm-hmm. So cyber, that's it. There's a lot of cyber out there. Like, there's a lot of dumb things you can do. Don't, like, well, actually, you tell me, like, I got to know the answers, right? Like, don't click stupid links on emails, right? Like, that's what comes down. I mean, like, 99% of cyber is common sense.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there's obviously some piece of it that isn't common sense.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody's changing banking information in an email, you should be telling your employees to follow up with a phone call to verify.
Yeah.
I mean,
100%.
You
Yeah.
know,
The IRS is not calling to verify your social security number. I mean, but then again, it's that level of shit that you got to deal with.
right. That's exactly right. Yeah. And the other component of all of this too, just the underlying tone is safety. What are the safety procedures? What's the training elements? What are the different components of our overall daily safety programs that we're imparting onto our staff? Items like safe driver training, right? Proper lifting procedures, hazardous material handling. I mean, these are all things that, whether or not we're just moving trash, these guys could be coming across, or guys and gals, could be coming across the need for some of this education. And I think it's important on the business owner to provide it.
Yeah, so unfortunately, the smaller businesses don't get the credit with like OSHA and bigger entities like that, bigger safety institutes, I guess you could say, because a lot of people ask, oh, hey, does it matter if I'm OSHA qualified? I would be honest with them. Honestly, that's great. I'm glad. Doesn't really do anything for me because I'm not a big, huge. I'm not being enforced or audited by OSHA. They're not going to come and check me. But I think Andy, I don't know if this is like that in Wisconsin, but the DOT is strict in certain areas.
I don't even know how to spell OSHA,
especially
but the
I've never
DOT
messed
is
with
all
DOT.
over our ass. The DOT is all
and they never
over
mess
our
with
ass.
me.
Oh, God.
I've been I think my guys been pulled like twice by them, and it was mainly for hey, tarp your shit. That's about it.
Yeah, no. When we put 24-foot box trucks on the road, it is a big reason to pull us over. Mm-hmm. And it's like we had to get med cards. We had to do all this shit. But we don't. Yeah. Yep.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So DOT is a pain in the ass. There's certain insurance requirements. Not really not insurance. It's more just a compliance conversation. And DOT is. I mean, they're doing their fucking jobs, so I guess I can't be that pissed. But I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
That's it. But then again, I don't want to be on the road, with my daughter and some asshole, that has a truck or a trailer or whatever that's not, up to snuff, loses a fucking tire and I'm swerving the damn ditch. So it's like, I get why they're doing it, but the biggest thing there is like, Eric. The other thing, Eric even kind of yells at me at our annual meeting if I don't talk to him. He's like, "All right, what's new with you?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, we bought a fucking trailer." And he's like, "Why do I not know about that?" I was like, "Oh, I should probably tell him." Right? Like a good insurance guy, like tell him about like big contracts and stuff, and then also a good insurance guy, like in Eric's case, he sends me work because he's out prospecting, talking to people. Like I talk about the dirty half dozen, and it's true.
We
like
did
you
plenty
need
of
them to make
jobs
their
for our
business.
insurance guy.
100%, right? Because it's a two-way street, right? Whether they're insurance jobs or they're out just networking and making shit happen. Like it's a two-way street.
Andy, you'll like this. We actually had a contract. I forgot about this scrap contract through our insurance person because of copper gutters. So whenever they would get damaged, whenever they get damaged, they were covered. And guess who got the pickup? And we would keep 80% of the yield, and the other 20 was to, I guess, the insurance company. But yeah, that's another thing. I mean, obviously we didn't go and ask for that. It just kind of happened. But our insurance guy was very involved in our communities just as well. That's actually how I met him, was through a networking event through a chamber. And the cool thing is, if you don't have an insurance guy, get one, because having that person,
you have a guy or girl, not a company. Exactly. You have to have a guy or girl.
Have a person that you can physically talk to, not go through a recording. Hey, Eric, look, something just happened and I'm freaking out. What do I do? Yeah. Or, Eric, quick question. I just bought this huge excavator. It only weighs 50,000 pounds, but I was going to tow it on this utility trailer. What do you think?
What are your thoughts?
And, honestly, I get those questions. We get those questions.
Yeah.
And I would go so far to say that when you're evaluating an insurance agent, a couple things. One, you want to make sure it is somebody who is approachable and accessible. That's extremely important. But two, you want to make sure that it's somebody who represents a number of insurance companies. Okay, not just like 5 or 10, local companies. They do home and auto. Okay, we're talking about robust commercial insurance companies that have an appetite, that have access to safety training, loss control prevention, that can really bring those resources to your company as you grow. Because Casey, just like you said, a lot of times things just happen and you don't realize you're growing that way, but you are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, correct. Needing more insurance is a good thing.
Yes.
That's what it comes down to, right? Let's wrap it at that, right? It's have the relationship, right? I always like the top takeaways right here, my top takeaways, right? Like having a relationship is key. I've learned that obviously with Eric, right? But needing more insurance is a good thing. That means you've got trucks, you've got trailers, you've got employees, you've got contracts, right? There's never a time where I'm like, oh, I need more insurance because my business is less.
Yeah.
Right. And again, it's almost like I talk about it all the time. I love paying bills. I love paying bills knowing that I needed these things to accomplish the goals that I'm accomplishing. And I have the money to do it. Right. Because they normally go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Right. Versus I have this fucking expense out of nowhere because I didn't plan ahead of time. You know, like Casey and I were talking, like, you know, I think Kate, you mentioned, right? Insurance is something that, you know, it's better to have it when you don't need it than need it when you don't have it. Right.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
That's it. Right, like it's called insurance for a reason. You're out there gambling every day when you're running your business,
especially when you're driving a damn truck.
That's right.
I mean, how many times has a piece of cardboard flown out of the trailer or a piece of foam?
Oh man, I remember I was on 45 northbound. This is like our first summer. I was borrowing a van from my neighbor in his shitty trailer, and I lost a aluminum patio table with the glass right on the freeway. And
I lost a refrigerator door on the freeway.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know I lost it because I'm just driving. And some guy pulls up to me and fucking giving me the business. I couldn't understand him. And I was like, that guy's a fucking asshole, whatever. Get back to the yard. All the chairs are there. Table.
Gone. Oh, man.
By the time I circled back, like 10, 15 minutes later, thing was fucking mangled on the side and there's glass everywhere. Oh no! I called the DOT and was like, "Hey, someone lost a table. I'm 45 north. It was right. If you know Milwaukee, it's 45 north, right north of Watertown Plank. We're actually right by North Avenue. Right, there's a bend between Watertown Plank and North Avenue before you get to Blur Line. It was somewhere in there. All I know is he was screaming at me by the time I got to like Capitol. So I know I got on the freeway right there ish. So, anyways, shit happens. We lose tables. Good to have relationships. Better to have insurance when you don't need it. Casey, Eric, any other final thoughts as we talk insurance here tonight?
No, I
think we covered it.
Yeah, thanks again for having me on, and I'm happy to be a resource wherever I can.
Yeah, total shameless plug, right? When I bring, we're bringing some more people on. Got my lawyer coming on in a few weeks, Dino. The reason why we're bringing people on is because you guys have the answers. Casey and I don't have the answers. And actually, one of our earlier podcasts, we specifically said, like, big banner, like, we are not the insurance guy, we're not your lawyer, don't fucking ask us these questions. But now that was an opportunity to be like, well, hold on, who do I ask? So, Eric, I do appreciate your time today.
Absolutely.
The knowledge. Taylor, our producer, will drop in your contact info. If people do want to get a hold of Eric, no shit, he's my guy. I use him, right? Do as I say, not as I do kind of thing. No, he's my guy. He does the thing. He'll audit your shit. If it's good to hook, he'll tell you. And if there's some opportunity, he'll tell you whatever. He's a Marine. God bless him, right? They're not as cool as the Army, but hey, no one's perfect, right? Marine, we all know Marine. We'll leave it at this. Muscles are required. Jeez. Muscles are required. Intelligence not expected. He's not that guy. He's actually a smart Marine. Good-looking haircut. Great guy. Get your insurance from Eric. That's it. There's your, like, radio plug. All right, Eric, been a pleasure. Casey, as always, I'm Andy Weins on the Trash Talk Business Podcast. Thanks for coming out.